Hello and welcome to Good Morning Channel. Today on the show we're going to be talking all things events, so something that people have very big opinions on, be it good or bad. And today on the show I'm joined by Mike Smart, who is a very experienced product and channel marketeer.
Thank you.
From the cyber perspective. Followed each other around in the industry a bit, haven't we? So lots of experience together.
Yeah.
And I've also got Ian Thomas on the show, who is CEO of Sapphire. So we're going to get into a few topics today. We've had a few questions that we thought we'd go through. And the big one for me that I wanted to start on is the importance of face-to-face interaction. And of course, a big reason for events, full stop. We've been between us in the industry a while, so been to a fair few events, the good, the bad and the ugly, I think it's fair to say. And so for me, it's just understanding, in your opinion, what is the importance now and today of face-to-face interaction?
Yeah. I don't mind starting. So I think for me, being face-to-face is important personally. And I think it's important in general when you're building relationships. You learn so much more about a person. And I think, we talk often about people buy from people, but you learn a lot about the person when you meet them in person. I think when it's a virtual approach, you don't get that small talk as well, I think. So you miss out on the body language and things like that.
Yeah.
That's one view. I think the other thing, and it's kind of COVID was a big sort of driver for change and moving towards virtual events. But one of the sort of surprising things of spending a couple of years doing virtual events was when you met people in person, just the size of them, the height of them. You know what I mean? Everyone was the same height online, but when you're in person, and I think that highlights the fact that we're all different, and you learn more just by being in front of somebody. That's what I think anyway.
Yeah, and I think it's the personal connection piece. You're on Teams or Zoom or whatever it is, it's all very transactional. You come on, you have the conversation you plan to have. There isn't the small talk. There's no connection. You're not really learning anything about people.
There's an agenda, right?
There's an agenda. You come on, we're busy. I've got back-to-back calls. I think in person, what you start to do is make a connection. But I think you also start to unearth the genuine requirement, the real need for, and qualify and is this really something you're going to do, and you have a much better, much richer conversation than you do in that sort of transactional medium.
I agree. I think as well, we spoke about it a bit earlier as well, the focus that you get from people face to face. I'm sure we've all been on those calls where miraculously the screen goes on and off, or they're looking down a bit more, so they've probably got some important text coming in. So
get distracted.
Absolutely. So I think that continues to play a really big role. So COVID, pre-COVID, COVID and post-COVID has obviously brought us into three very different eras from an events perspective. Sort of what's your view on that, and how has that changed the psychology, I suppose, behind face-to-face events?
I mean, I think pre-COVID, there was so many events, and I think the format had become a bit jaded. And then, of course, during COVID, we were all locked away in our rooms, and for me anyway, I was craving the opportunity to just get out and speak to people again and have a conversation rather than a transaction with them. I don't know how you felt.
No, I'm personally the same. I get energy from being around people for all the reasons we talked about earlier, I think. But there are some people that aren't very social, and it's a good excuse for them not to go out and meet people. So there are two sides to it. But I also think when you agree to a meeting, you are committing to something, aren't you? And I think I think it is a little bit. It shows there's a commitment. You feel like there's some skin in the game, as they like to say.
They've made an effort, right? They're not coming to the office every day anymore. So they have made an effort to come to your event. They've put trousers on. They've washed or whatever it is. But they've made an effort, so they've come for a reason. And I think that reason is really important for us as exhibitors, that we're then adding value. They put an effort in. They're giving up their time. We need to do something more than just stand and smile at them. There's got to be a purpose to it.
Absolutely. And for me, a bit of shift on that as well has been helping people understand that value before they come as well. Whereas I think, to your point, pre-COVID, there was so many events that people could fill their diaries quite easily, couldn't they, attending events, to say, I was meeting customers, or I was meeting partners, and that's where I was. Whereas I think with this shift now, because people are wanting more value from events, driving attendance, I think, has become, we'd all agree, increasingly hard.
Yeah.
But in order to combat that, I think we really need to start focusing on how we're showing that value ahead of time. So what is it that they're turning up to, so they know what they're signing up to, basically.
Yeah, and I think if you're doing moving from virtual back to physical, you can achieve more in the same time, right? A virtual event is always going to be shorter than the real event. It's going to be maximum of an hour and a half or 2 hours, because you can't keep someone's attention for that long remotely, but you can in person. You won't have that person there for an hour and a half, but you'll meet lots of other people within that hour and a half or within those 2 or 3 days. So it can be a lot more productive. And I think, just as you were saying, if you're driving people to it, and there's that pre-event work and the post-event work, then you've got many more interactions than you would if it was a virtual event.
Yeah.
And I do think people's time increasingly is precious, right? And I think so. I think you've got to demonstrate that there's going to be value, and the value isn't just come to my stand, but what's all the rest of the value around the event? Whether it's a big exhibition or it's a smaller round table, that one of the biggest benefits is that networking element to it.
Yeah.
And making sure that you're making the most of that. Don't listen to my opinion, listen to the opinion of 10 of your peers.
Yeah.
Actually, I think is hugely valuable.
Yeah, I agree. And do you have a view on, because we've had that shift from virtual now to obviously the face-to-face much more, I did wonder if we were going to see a bit more of a mix coming out the back of COVID. So, a better mix of virtual and physical. Because I don't know about you, but I did an awful lot of cocktail making, virtual cocktail making during COVID. I did gingerbread house decorating at Christmas. There was an awful lot going on at that point. But I don't see that at all anymore.
No.
So, and to your point, not everyone is social, and some people do prefer a virtual connection. So do you think maybe we've gone so far the other way now that there's still a room for both, more than just a webinar?
I think the events that you do virtually now have to be very short and very specific, because I think everybody is spending far too much time on video calls already. We're all spending half our life on Teams.
Yeah.
Do I really want to add to that with an hour and a half of gingerbread house building? I definitely do not.
Well spent.
I definitely do not. And so I think I think if you're going to do a webinar, it's got to be really specific. It's got to add real value. And I think anyway, people's attention spans getting shorter and shorter. You wouldn't do a 45-minute social media clip. No. Right? So why would you think a 45-minute webinar is a good idea? Yeah. And so I think if you want to have more interaction, then you've got to pack more value into it.
So we've just touched on a bit earlier around the increasing difficulty and challenges to get people to events, and that could be a small round table right up to the big exhibitions, which obviously we take part in a lot here at Distology, and obviously is a big part of Sapphire's flagship event as well. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is cost versus ROI, the age-old question when it comes to marketing. So what's your view on that when it comes to, maybe we'll start with the bigger exhibitions, because again, they are very expensive. They're a huge investment if done right. But what is your view of that, and how, in your experience, have you been able to maximise it or not, as the case may be?
Yeah, I think it's really good when you're putting that sort of money into an event that you understand what do you want to get out of it. Do you know what I mean? And the obvious thing is I want leads, I want business, but there's a few other options, isn't there? There's a bit of pipeline acceleration. You're inviting existing prospects along. You can nudge them along. You can do demonstrations. There are various sort of needs during the sales cycle. You've got customers. Maybe you want to talk to them about what's new, or a chance to meet the exec and get a feel for the company and where it's going and things like that. And then there's branding, of course, which is the obvious one, which is, if you're there, does that mean you're in the market and you're serious? If you're not there, does that mean you're not serious and you're not in the market? That's the debate I hear every time at these trade shows.
Everyone likes to look at InfoSec, don't they, and say, oops, so-and-so is here, or so-and-so is not here this year, and what does that mean? So,
But I think that's right. I think you've got to be really clear when you're setting out that, your marketing plan for the year or whatever. what is it I'm trying to achieve? Yeah, for me, events can't just be about lead generation. It's got to be about lead acceleration, which you were talking about. It's a little bit about maybe about brand positioning and picking where you want to be seen. But I think there's also the opportunity to launch a new thing where you've got a concentration of your customers or prospects. For me, that's the biggest return. How do I get our latest thinking out to a broad spectrum of our customers all at the same time, and then encourage them to talk about it and get that feedback of have we missed the mark or not? That's the real return. I can't put that into pounds and pence, but it's the value of getting that feedback from clients.
Yeah, and I know I've talked about sort of the bigger shows there and the exhibitions and that type of thing, but on the flip side of that, with smaller events, which we're definitely seeing a lot more traction in now, I think when people, to your point, time is precious, they're going to look for what they're going to squeeze the most value out of. And so whether you're looking on the bigger ones for feedback, the smaller ones, I think people are looking for that peer-to-peer, right? And nothing's going to accelerate a deal or add credibility than someone talking to a peer and then sell it for you, really, isn't it, at that point?
Exactly
so
right.
I think from my perspective, that's definitely where we're seeing a shift. Would you... is that where you're investing time, a split 100%. From both those types?
100%. If I can get my customers to talk about the things that we're doing or push the messages, particularly in security, it's not about pushing a product. It's about saying, look, this topic, the topic du jour, I call it, because it changes all the time. But this topic's really important. This is why you should pay attention to it. I can say that to someone blue in the face. If I've got 10 of my customers saying it to 10 more of my customers, they're going to listen to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We're seeing much more sort of executive level or roundtable events where there's a discussion, and it's a 2 or 3 or 5-way discussion rather than a one-way discussion, like a presentation presenting the benefits of something. And I think there's another reason why it's successful is because if the attendees know that similar people will be there, then there's value for them to be there, not just in the topic that you want to talk about, but also with them meeting each other, maybe the drink or whatever after.
And I think in what is a fairly uncertain world at the moment, I think a lot of people are looking for a triangulation of that input, or reaffirming, I think this is that right. It's a little bit of shared pain, but it's also a little bit of uncertainty of, am I on the right path? Well, let me listen to 10 other people and ask them that question. And if they all say, no, your path's over there, great. And if they all say, I was thinking that too, great. Both outcomes are good.
Great. I agree with that. Yeah.
So back to the cost versus ROI point. We, from a distribution perspective, of course, can offer, we're at InfoSec every year, we will offer the stand, and we will always do it from a multi-vendor perspective for multiple reasons. And one of those is, of course, because we're solution-led. From your perspective, Mike, you're at a vendor, obviously a sole vendor. So how do you go about bigger stands or bigger investments?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be careful, obviously, because you want to make that budget stretch, and get as much value from it as possible. One of the things I think that works really well is when vendors come together, because that's kind of what everybody wants. And in fact, it's the top question, or at least the question that people want the answer to, which is, I wish my vendors would work together because it would make my life easier. And I think that's the same when you're opening up discussions, is if we can come together, then the person who gets the invite to let's say a CISO roundtable, if they get it and it's sponsored by one vendor, maybe there's a hesitation that they're going to get one-sided story. And actually, when you say, look, we're going to bring multiple vendors together because we want to have a broad conversation and it's not about one thing or whatever, I think that works really well. And
I think you're adding value by not being a single voice, but a multiple voice. You're piecing together the solution for the client. We do Cyber UK every year. We pay for that. We invite some of our vendors onto the stand. We don't charge them for it, but they're providing their time, they're providing their insight, they're making it more interesting for the audience, which means more people come to the stand. So for me, there is an element of spreading the cost, but the cost isn't just, again, about the pound notes, it's about people's time and effort as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked a lot there around smaller scale events and big exhibition style events. And when we think of Sapphire, we of course will think of NISC. My understanding is that the first one of those was back in 1999, so been running a while. For those that don't know, I just wanted you to give us an overview of the NISC event and what it is, and then love to chat a bit more about how that's evolved based on everything that we've just talked about.
Yeah, sure. So, National Information Security Conference, been running since 99, like you say, so we're in our 26th, 27th year now. Had a couple of years off over COVID. And it was started as a community event. So the idea was we would get our customers together once a year in a nice hotel and have a conversation. And that's sort of evolved over the years to become a bigger and bigger event. To invite the vendors in to be part of that conversation. But very much we're very clear with our vendors, that it's not a sales event. You do not come to NISC to do a pitch. It's to be part of the conversation, so to add value. And NISC is all about that thought leadership, about talking about the topic du jour again, but also about what's coming down the line. So, what's the future hold? So, last year was loads of stuff about AI, like everybody was. This year we're going to talk a lot more about things like post-quantum encryption. We're going to talk about the cyber resilience bill. So the idea is that it's a value-add event. I mean, people give up 2 to 3 days of their time to come to a residential event. So it's got to add value. And the big value that they get from it, Sapphire organise it. We're not on stage. We have a stand, but it's a Sapphire organised event, not a Sapphire event. Because people come to it because they're listening to industry peers, industry experts, talking about the things that they care about, and spending 2 days talking to their peers in the industry. I was with a client this morning who's been coming to NISC. He's been to 18 NISCs. And it's like, he comes back every year and he brings his team, and it's the one thing they do together as a team, because they get the value from that thought leadership, that insight, that networking. Some of it's validation, some of it's, I never thought of that kind of moments to it. And I think, that's where the real power of NISC is. We move it around the country. There's a big vendor involvement in it. So there's an exhibition part of it, but we limit the number of vendors we allow in the room. So it doesn't become InfoSec 2. I don't want that. We want people to go away from those 2 or 3 days thinking, I've learned something. I'm much clearer about my strategy for next year. I've talked to some people that I would never normally get exposed to in different industries. We do run a couple of sort of industry vertical events, like we'll have a transport session, we'll have an infrastructure session, so that they can talk to peers, like-minded peers. But it's about walking away with insight. And I think, people giving up 3 days of their lives for this. It's really important they come away with something valuable.
Absolutely. So in regards to then how it's evolved, because obviously life is a bit different to 1999. So how has it evolved? Like you've mentioned just then around, you've got sector specific tracks now, which I'm assuming it didn't have right at the beginning as the group's grown. But what would you say is how has it evolved the most?
And I think, originally it was a thank you to our customers. Hey, if you've been a loyal customer, come to a hotel, we'll have a few drinks, we'll have a chat. We'll go out, we'll have a gala dinner. And it started as a thank you. And it's evolved over the years, partly driven by the vendor input, which is really, really important, to be much more about insight. And then COVID happened. And it was like, are we going to be able to get people to come back to it? And the first one after COVID, there was only about 60 delegates, because people were like, is this still going to be valuable to me? But then last year was record numbers, 130. We'll have 150 there this year. And it's become an opportunity. It's an idea exchange. It's an opportunity for people to share those opinions. And we've changed the structure of it from, sit in an auditorium with somebody on stage talking to you. Now half the agenda is smaller groups, round table discussions, that people can explore topics and all of those topics on the roundtables come from the attendees.
Yeah.
So we say to people, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
And we'll set up a session for that.
Yeah. So thank you for that overview. We're excited to be part of it this year again. And we talked a lot around what good can look like or should look like. But of course, there's always room for growth and always room for improvement. So as it stands at the minute, what do you think is missing either from events that you've been to or maybe missing as an event full stop for our ecosystem?
I mean, one thing I would say is that we talked about sort of executive or smaller roundtable events are very productive because the team or the attendees are there to share information, get validation, get confidence. These are really important things, and maybe topics that come up that are really valuable to the others. And it seems a shame to limit that knowledge just to the people who are in the room. And I think one of the things that I've seen historically, and I haven't seen for a while, is somebody taking that knowledge and capturing it and then sharing it to a broader audience, and I think that's something I'd like to see a bit more of, because these are great discussions. Everyone comes away feeling quite energized, I think, and sort of relieved or optimistic or whatever those words are. It would be great to share that with the broader market.
Yeah, how do you turn some of that content, those great conversations, into white papers, video clips, so you can share it more broadly? Because I think there is a thirst for more conversation, more understanding, a little bit of validation, but also a little bit of information. I think the more I'd like to see more real discussion at events. I think there's a lot of broadcast. A lot of people standing on stage or a round table where you've got a keynote speaker. I think the getting the discussion going, and I think that's where these smaller events work really well, is set the expectation, I'm going to buy you lunch, but you're going to have to sing for your supper kind of feel to it, that I expect you to participate in the conversation and add something to the group.
So we've talked there around cost versus ROI, what good looks like, and of course the big exhibition stands, which we know, as we've said, is a huge investment. And I think when we think about exhibitions, historically, I think as well, we've always thought about merch, giveaways, freebies, call it what you want. And as we've been sort of evolving, that's moved into proper stand activation and, how we're bringing brands to life for people when they attend. What's your view of merchandise?
I mean, you've seen. I think we've seen it all over the years, and I think I don't mind merchandise. I feel there's lots of different things to think about when you're deciding what sort of merchandise you want. There's how does it align with your brand? I think I think sometimes you have to think about that. There's maybe an environmental impact. I wouldn't mind me talking about that. I think that becomes more of a topic. It can be a bit of a differentiator as well. I think if you're not doing and sending batteries out and chargers that everyone's got, and you're thinking about the environment, I think that's a positive thing. But also, one thing I would say is it does depend on what you want to achieve with that event. If you want everybody's contact details from everybody who attends that event, then mints or pens or whatever, that might be the right thing. But then you've got to deal with the costs of following up with all of those leads, and certainly where I work, there's a large enterprise or there's a very specific target. Maybe you don't want to have a huge store of giveaways. You want very specific things for very specific audience. So I do think you need to think a bit more broadly about it. But I do get that merchandise, it's branding, that's a key part of who you are and why you're there as well.
Yeah. I think it's two purposes, right? So how do I attract people onto my stand? How do I remind them of who I am after they leave?
Yeah.
Right, sure. And I think that brand appropriate piece is the key. Because a number of times you see big company, big brand giving away cheap rubbish, and I just think that's such a mismatch. You've got the wrong association. I think the environmental impact of most of this stuff ends up in the bin or doesn't work.
Sure.
It's just a waste of money and it's damaging the environment. So if you're going to do merch, do high quality. Spend a bit of money on it. It doesn't have to be a lot of volume to be discerning with it. I think, you've got to think about how else I can get people to my stand though. My big bugbear is the Formula One simulator. That everybody comes to your stand to queue up for the Formula simulation doesn't actually talk to anybody on the stand.
Yeah.
So you've got to think about, why am I doing these things? It's a bit like the ROI. I think a lot of this sort of exhibition and marketing stuff's become very formulaic. I have to have merch. What shall we do? Yeah. Well, if you can't think of anything useful, if you can't think of anything appropriate or differentiated, best not to do it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we certainly talked about it before, in other conversations, but I think it's about that, it's not just turning up on the day and hoping people talk to you. You do have to work hard ahead of that, don't you? You have to, we talked about it isn't just about lead gen. Potentially you want to maintain and build relationships with customers. So bring them along, invite them. And so you can drive attendance before the event, obviously. And I think we shouldn't forget that. And maybe merchandise plays an important part.
That was going to be my point. I think it's how you tie those things together. Isn't it? So then if you can invest more in the merch as a result of that, because it's part of that stand activation, right? And I think, we've seen a couple of players definitely change the game around that. I can't not mention Wiz. We've seen what they've done from a brand perspective. They're taking it, I think, so much bigger than just a tech brand, haven't they? It's stuff that people actively wanted to go and get. And it was limited edition. And I think it's that type of thing, which is, again, and we're seeing it across other brands. A lot of my team went round InfoSec, was getting a sense of that. And, we're seeing merchandise showcased in glass, boxes like a shop front now, which again, that perceived value is increased, and therefore I think it's just the psychology of it. You want it more, right?
But I think that's the point. It's high quality, it's desirable, and you're doing it as it's a reason for people to come to your stand. And people will remember it afterwards because of the quality of what it is.
And also, you can't just pick it up. You have to have a conversation.
Got to have a conversation.
And I think that is a big thing, right? People just go around, as we know, with a huge tote bag, which they've probably picked up on one stand, and fill it with everything as they go around.
But please, can we have no more mints, no more water bottles? Everybody's got enough now.
I've got a lot of water bottles, yes, absolutely. Great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your insight. Thank you for joining me. And thank you for watching along. Hope you found it useful. Please join in the conversation, anything that you agreed or disagreed with, and we'll see you next time.